Welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voisen, the host of our podcast, and I want to thank all of our listeners who join us worldwide to listen to the words of wisdom from our authors. And today we have a returning guest, Andreas Moritz, and Andreas is joining us from the North Carolina area, and we're going to be speaking with him about one of his many books, but called Lifting the Veil of Duality. Good day to you, Andreas.
Good morning, Greg. Thank you.
I appreciate having you back on again. It's a pleasure. The last time we had you on was The Timeless Secrets of Health and Rejuvenation. That is an amazing book, and we had many listeners make comments on that, enjoying that so much, so it's a pleasure to have you back on. But I'm going to let our listeners who don't know much about you know a little bit about you anyway. Andreas is a medical intuitive, a practitioner of Ayurvedic and ideology, of shiatsu, vibrational medicine, a writer and an artist. Born in southwest Germany in 1954, Andreas had to deal with several severe illnesses from an early age, which compelled him to study diet, nutrition, and various methods of natural healing while still a child. By the age of 20, he'd completed his training in both ideology, the diagnostic science of eye interpretation, Dianetics, and in 1981, Andreas began studying Ayurvedic medicine in India and finished his training as a qualified practitioner of Ayurvedic in New Zealand in 1991. Rather than being satisfied with merely treating the symptoms of illness, he dedicated his life's work to understand and treating the root causes of illness. And I think that's the key difference here for my listeners, is he's really looking at the root causes. Because of his holistic approach, he has a great success with causes of terminal disease where conventional methods of healing provided futile. It is, again, a pleasure having you on, and we're going to be speaking about lifting the veils of duality and really how that relates to your health as well. And you mentioned, that for every cause, there's yet another cause. In other words, people are always creating causes for why something happened to them, and it never ends. When we finally stop searching for the answers, you say, to our problems, we begin to realize that there is really no meaning other than the meaning we give something. Can you give a comment to our listeners saying how a proverbial cycle that is, because it just kind of incessantly goes on and on?
Oh, yes, and it's beautiful, your topic, because it is going so deep into our psyche and connects it with our physicality. So when we have a thought, which is an impulse in our mind, an impulse of energy that is encoded with information, then or an idea or a belief system that we have, then that creates or generates an effect, and it's a wave effect that somewhere bounces back to us, and we get recognition, we get a feedback, we get a almost like a reflection of that thought, and then we realize either that thought was a good one or a bad one. And so we are constantly having feedback mechanisms when we create something. And when we feel good about our creation, our thoughts, our ideas, our creativity, then it uplifts us, and we can then pursue another reflection, and we create something new and get rejoicement from that, and then we create something better. Or, on the other hand, we may create a sad, a depressing thought. We have an idea that something that happens to us is really despicable, or it's sad and depressing. Then we have a thought that bears or creates another reflection, and that makes us even feel worse. And so our perception of whatever we experience, including our own self, will determine what we experience in life, how good we feel about life. And so it's a very, very interesting situation. So we are the creators of what happens to us. It's not necessarily that we can avoid certain things in life. if something does happen, it has already occurred. So it's nothing we can do about it. However, we have the power to look at it with a different set of eyes. Our perception counts, because our perception of what happens to us determines how this particular thing affects us. So if a person sees and has an accident, and that particular accident could be construed as something terrible to one person, but the same kind of accident may actually be a revelation to another person that says, well, I needed to change something in my life. This is serving me well because it turns my life around. I'm taking a new direction. It's a wake-up call. So our perception will determine whether something that happened to us is either a bad experience or a good experience. And that is up to us. And that power is vested in us. So we have always something in life that we can perceive either as useful or not useful, because everything in life is preceded by something else, and there's something else that was before. So there's a whole chain of events. If something happened to me in childhood when I was traumatized because I had a terminal illness, then I could have you sort of committed suicide because it's just too depressing that you're given 1 year to live, and there's nothing beyond that. And so you think that that's the end of the road, whereas I took it in a different way. The moment I stopped struggling and figure out how I can save my life, that's when I had incredible insights for my next step to take. I decided suddenly that I needed to do something completely different than what doctors would have told me until then. I changed my diet. I stopped eating animal proteins, and within 6 weeks, my serious health condition, called a serious condition of arrhythmia, disappeared and never returned. And also my arthritis disappeared. So simple things happen to us, insights, information that we get when we stop struggling, when we no longer are attached to the outcome of a particular idea or judgment. And so there's an old saying, as you sow, so shall you reap. An eye for an eye. If you do something will happen as a result of it. And we are always creating things to further us, to improve us, to evolve. We are never creating things to actually destroy us. Even so, sometimes we feel like we are destroying us. We are doing something bad to us. We feel guilty. The idea of guilt and shame is coming from the perception that I did something I shouldn't have done.
Right, which is creating that separation. And, one of the things that I want you to comment on, two things, if you would, please. One, I know that there's lots of clinical research that talks about how emotions and feelings change the chemical internal things, such as endorphins that are released in our bodies, and cortisol and how it's released as a result of stress. And I think it's important to understand that linked to these emotions, links to these feelings, frequently that we get caught in kind of this proverbial duality of separation, actually starts to be a proverbial place for disease to form. And one of the main places we need to get or move from is this unfortunate cycle that many people create, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And you're spot on. Literally every thought, feeling, and emotion that we have gets translated into very powerful neurotransmitters. These are specific hormones that are secreted in the brain, and they interact with the cells, the surface of the cells in the body. So for every receptor your site in the brain cells, we have equal receptor sites in the cells of the liver, the stomach, the small intestine, large intestine, even the skin. So every part in our body interacts with the energy and information that is created when you have a thought. So you literally have biochemical reactions, such as the adrenaline going up when you're stressed about something, when you perceive something to be threatening. Another person may not perceive the same situation as threatening, but as an opportunity, like a challenge that he's joyfully overcoming and getting better at something that he felt he wasn't good enough yet at. And so you have, again, our subjective perception of what occurs in life is the ultimate determinant whether that particular thing is going to harm us or suit us.
Yeah.
And so so it's a real profound secret that you're stumbling upon.
Well, let's talk about this for a second, because everybody has judgment, and one of the things that does more to separate people and create duality in their life has got to be this concept of judgment. You know, you judge another person, you judge yourself, you're judging something, and you say it's the attempt of the mind to attach some kind of meaning to our experiences in life. I want you to explain how detrimental really judgment is, not only to ourselves but really to our body as well.
Very good question there. And I would say it is detrimental and it is non-detrimental at the same time, because if you recall, let's say you did something when you were younger and you were not proud of it, you beat up another your child. And I'm blaming myself for it, and I feel guilty of having done it, and then later on in life, a similar situation is drawn into my life, where again, I'm challenged by someone attacking me, and then I'm beating him up, and then, so there could be a whole sequence of events that eventually makes me a very guilty person, and I feel I'm not good enough. I'm a bad person because I did these things, and I didn't intend to, but it just happened. And so gradually I put myself more and more, down more and more, to a point that I become depressed and withdrawn, because I don't want to harm anyone anymore. I don't want to get into negative situations like this. So guilt is definitely the way of judgment. So when we feel guilty about something, we become judgmental of ourselves, and then we look around us and we see a lot of people that we judge as well. Because when we are not happy inside of us, we are not happy outside of us either. So what happens within us then gets reflected by life situations where people approach us that then trigger or push the buttons in us to bring out that feeling of guilt and shame. And that is the good thing, because we need to have exposure to these people that then push our buttons so that we have an opportunity to make peace with ourselves. Otherwise, we will keep that thorn, have these thorns inside of our heart, which are picking on us, which are constantly causing us more shame and depressing us. So it's important in life that we have exposure to negative situations, so-called negative situations, to bring things that we have buried deep inside of us to the surface, so that we can find a way to love ourselves again, to forgive ourselves again, to accept ourselves the way we are, so that we can move on.
Well, it's, as you say, it's almost kind of like a mirror. So there's a reflection of the things that you have, issues you have going on that you see in others, and sometimes that's the greatest way to bring awareness to that. Now, one of the things that I love that you say is that you mentioned that our subconscious has its roots in the oneness or the singularity. We're talking about duality at this point, lifting the veil of duality. So to get to the other side of duality, we need to talk about this singularity of self, that all thoughts come from this higher self. How can our listeners make this transition out of this duality thinking, meaning this separated thinking, to finding health as a result of this singular thinking, or this thinking from the higher self? And actually, it's not thinking. I should say, more really, because when you get to that level, it's not a matter of thinking, it's a matter of knowing and a matter of being.
Yes. Well, life is our greatest teacher, so it's unavoidable for us to eventually return to where we started, which is the singular state of being. We are, in essence, a oneness. And so there's only one of us, right? Each one of us is only one of us, even though some people are schizophrenic and they have a dual mindset. But in most cases, there's just one of us. And that oneness is divided into opposites when we identify with certain situations, people. We identify with a role that we play. For example, I'm playing the role as a doctor, may play a role as a spouse, as a father, as a worker or co-worker, as the CEO of a company or whatever. So we give each other's roles and identities, which we are not those identities, we just associate with them. And we may become so attached to the roles we play that we say, well, I'm a very good tennis player, or I'm an excellent doctor, I'm the best of this particular type of profession. And so we have, because we attach to them, we need to experience the opposite eventually in that life. And that means we draw towards us something that will disconnect us from that expertise. So eventually we will have to let go of what we have acquired, at least to let go of the attachment to that, so that we can free and liberate us again and return to that essence that we are, that oneness. So the world takes us, or the life on this planet takes us through opposites, the right and wrong, the good and bad, the ups and downs, the left and right, the experience of darkness inside of us and the light inside of us. So we experience all the entire spectrum. And it's like moving from one extreme of a pendulum to the other extreme. And it keeps pendulum going back, but eventually it will rest in the middle. And that's the point where we are neutral. We are basically not affected by either the good or the bad. That means we are no longer in the game of switching from one opposite to the other.
Would that be finding this homeostasis? Because you mentioned that the link between this higher self and the physical awareness of the body, which you call the ego self, becomes further disturbed when the body shows signs of malfunction. So what I want you to explain there, because the further we remove ourselves from this higher self, from this oneness, the more attached we are to that ego self, the more disturbed the body shows all these signs of malfunction. And I get that completely, but I want you to explain to the listeners that if you're not moving towards singularity and you're continuing on a path of duality and you're allowing this ego to continue to move you down that path, the reality is you are setting yourself up for dis-ease.
Absolutely, because the homeostasis, which is the harmony within the body and harmony between the body and the external environment. And when we disconnect ourselves, let's say if we are upset about something, something externally, like in a relationship that went sour, a divorce the person is going through, the loss of a job, and we feel disconnected, we feel the separation from something, we get anxious. And so when we have that anxiety in us, we are translating the fear or anxiety into those specific hormones that make us tense inside. That means the stress hormones will start to rise. You may have an estrogenic, as a woman, a surplus of estrogen moving through the system, which can then speed up cell growth in the breast and so on. So you can have multiple reactions depending on what you perceive as a threat. That will determine whether it is, or which part of the body is going to respond to that particular thing. If you get angry about something, then you will develop liver congestion, a bileless liver, and too much bile production, which can then eventually form stones in the bile ducts of the liver and clog the bile ducts, and you don't digest your food well, and then you become toxic in the body as a result of all that undigested food being decomposed by bacteria. So there can be a huge number of responses. If you are afraid of a parent, for example, you are bound to develop some kidney issues because fear translates into specific hormones that cause congestion or fluid buildup in the kidneys, which can eventually lead to a precipitation of urinary deposits and cause kidney stones. So like that, there are so many different parts of the body that correspond to different types of emotions that we generate in response to seeing something as a threat. And so there's opportunity to heal multiple illnesses, and that's why the CDC, even officially, the Centers for Disease Control officially write on their website that 80% of the illnesses that we have today are related to stress experience. So stress is literally the perception of something that doesn't seem to harmonize with us. That means we are separating ourselves from something else. And the moment we do that, we are creating a dislodging and unbalancing effect in the homeostatic balance in the body.
I think there's a statement, Andreas, that's been used for years and years and years, and I know my listeners know this one. What you resist persists, and frequently the resistance of something that's coming to you or an experience in your life, the non-acceptance of that experience is frequently what's causing that stress. And I want to ask you this question because you said whatever the relative cause of the pain and suffering in life may be, the absolute cause is the great separation, which left many of us vulnerable to disappointment, abuse, and abandonment. Can you comment on, from an Ayurvedic standpoint, we all have body types, and how these body types react to these sensitive aspects of the stress that we're under?
Yeah, different body types respond to their environment in a different way. So, for example, a Vata body type, they are the thin body types. They have very thin skins, and literally their skin is so thin that means they are more sensitive to environmental changes. They are sensitive to other people's your losses, to the trauma that they're going through. So they are the emotional beings. They deal with the environment in an emotional way. Whereas there's the opposite body type, the Kapha type, heavy set, very well built, strong muscles, thick connective tissue under the skin. That means you cannot even see the tendons and the bones sticking up on the back of the hands. So they are very well covered and protected. So for them, something to bother them that happens in the environment is very rare. So they don't process emotions in the same way. And then there is the middle type, the Pitta body type, that is reacting very quickly. He is not internalizing it right away. He's reacting. So he will become angry, flare up very quickly, but then calm down very quickly. So any stress that he has, he's readily sort of working out. He may just start running or do a workout, and then he comes back and say everything is fine. And so different people respond to stresses in a different way. Now, somehow we made the choice before we incarnate in this human body which body type we want to have in order to allow us to deal with remnants of undigested experiences or unfinished business that we have brought into this lifetime via our consciousness. And so we embed that consciousness, create cellular memories in our body, which then work out stresses or conflicts in a specific way that is different from person to person depending on his body type. But all in all, the ultimate person that or thing that we are dealing with is our consciousness. And our consciousness is undivided, but it divides itself as we identify with situations and circumstances and conflict situations, the world situation. If a person, if a kapha body type is a stockbroker, he will not get as stressed as if a vata type is a stockbroker, because the ups and downs, they're just unmanageable for vata type. He gets very emotional about it. And the kapha says, oh, no problem, tomorrow is another day. And so he will have a completely different response. So for him, that particular job is more conducive, to let him be balanced, whereas another person, he may get very upset. So it's good to know sometimes, and that's why Timeless Secrets of Health and Rejuvenation, that book, is very useful to help people determine what body type they are, so that they make choices. Let's say they are choosing a particular job that is more conducive to their body type, and it's not, creating a source of upsetness.
I think that's an excellent statement that you had, is, kind of understanding, with an understanding of your body type, understanding what you're more sensitive to, what kind of foods you're sensitive to, what kind of occupations, what kind of emotional upsets might create more stress on your body. One of the biggest things that I think, Andreas, and you address it in the book, is people's fear of death or anything else that exists, and you say only in the domain of duality, of third-dimensional existence. And you're saying that this fear and many other fears make us vulnerable to basically what we're fearing. So can you make a comment? Because I think there's many people out there, probably most of the population, that have a fear of death. And obviously, if you're running around with that fear, that isn't helping you emotionally, mentally, physically, or spiritually. So can you comment?
Oh, absolutely. It's a wonderful question, and it's my favorite topic, in fact, because I have a completely different attitude toward death. When my father died 3 times in total, twice he was brought back, and the third time he, passed, to the other side. He went through the dark tunnel like so many others and entered into a light, and it was the most beautiful experience. And when he shared that with me, it took a little bit of that fear of death away from me when I was 18 years old. And later on, I had my own near-death experiences, and once I died, I was dead for 8 minutes, and during a malaria attack. And so when I came back, everything in my life changed. I literally came alive, whereas before I wasn't quite alive, because I had not made peace with the concept that death is something we cannot control. In reality, we don't need to control it because we don't die. I never died. I never felt I lost anything. I completely remained myself. I had my capabilities. I was able to think and feel and emote. I was enriched by the death experience. I was expanding, and the clarity of thinking is just unbelievable. You think something, immediately you know it. You don't even have to think it. It's already there before you even intend to think it. So what happened when I died is that it took the fear of death away. So today I have a completely different perception. But you can see that everything people are afraid of is somewhat linked to the fear of death or the fear of dying, which means people are afraid of losing something. So the loss of a job is threatening a person's survival, because if you don't have the money, you may not be able to find food, you're not able to sustain yourself, you don't have some place to sleep, you may be homeless, and you might starve to death. So there is a fear around everything in life, and doctors particularly, they are so terrified of losing a patient because it reflects back on their own mortality. So instead of seeing life as a continuum, even after death, we are terrified of dying or seeing other people dying, and we have this judgment in us that death is something terrible that needs to be avoided under every circumstance, and that is absolutely not true, because death and dying is one of the most uplifting and beautiful experiences. That it's good for us to prepare ourselves for it in a way by enjoying our life and not be terrified of everything that happens to us. So our perception of the things, like if a person gets diagnosed with cancer, it should be an uplifting. It should be an uplifting experience where I say, okay, something is happening to me. I know that everything that happens to me is in my highest and best interest if I see it that way. And I choose to see it that way. And since I see it that way, everything becomes a blessing. Everything becomes something useful in my life that is helping me to transform some of the fears and the inadequacies, the almost the dread of making mistakes. If you ask me when I make a mistake, how I feel about it, I celebrate having made a mistake. I love making mistakes because I found that making mistakes helped me to evolve, to become stronger in areas that I wasn't strong enough, where I felt weak, I felt inadequate, I felt not good enough. And so making mistakes helped me to reroute my life, to find a different way, and to become aware of the self-imposed limitations in my life. So letting go of the need to avoid things and to just let them happen. Like Jesus Christ said, love your enemies, love your adversities. That's the translation, really. Love the things you don't like. Stop resisting the things. And when you stop resisting things, you're no longer afraid of them. That means you're becoming fearless. And being fearless also creates a very healthy body, where the body is no longer threatened.
Fearlessness is related to liberation, which is related to freedom, and that also brings us back to this duality, because when you get to that state, Andreas, as you know, you create this oneness versus this duality, and I think there couldn't be anything more ultimate than that oneness or connection with the higher self, so that you don't have the fear of anything, really. So now you're saying the fear of death, because that's what you've just addressed. And I think that you did it so eloquently, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be on with us this morning and to speak about some of the things that you're passionate about. And I hope that our listeners were able to pick up on the message, and will certainly get a copy of your book, Lifting the Veil of Duality. Where can they go to learn more about Ener-Chi, which is your website, your 12 books that you've got, some videos that I know are up there? You're very prolific, and you continue to put out content which you believe people need to help them transform their lives, both emotionally, spiritually, and physically.
Well, the best place to go to would be Ener-Chi.com. That is ENER hyphen or dash CHI.com. Ener-Chi.com. ENER hyphen CHI.com. And then you can also click on the Facebook your link or my blog site, which disseminates free information all the time, every day. So there's a lot to browse through and enjoy it. I love sharing that, and I share it freely on those sites and also on Twitter. There's a Twitter access where you can get a lot of free information that's taken from my books or things that I've said in the past or that I'm saying right now.
Yeah, and all of the books are Kindle books and the e-books as well for my listeners, and we'll put a link to the website for them so that they know. Thank you so much on this morning before Thanksgiving, which I want to let all my listeners know to have a nice Thanksgiving and count your blessings, especially the blessings of the wisdom associated with Andreas here this morning that he shared with us. And if you just take a bit of this and apply it to your life, and I think the key is much of this is about practice. It's about, actually working with your mind so that your mind isn't creating that separation. So if you can lift this veil of duality, it's about non-separation. And I think you've articulated it very well this morning, Andreas. So thanks for being on with us.
Well, thank you for having me.